That's my script. All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting to order. My name is Councillor Paul Ainsley. I'm the chair of the General Government and Licensing Committee. The clerk has confirmed that we have quorum, so I would like to call meeting number 16 to order and welcome everyone. Today's meeting is being held by video conference. City staff are also connecting to the meeting by video conference. As City Hall remains closed, the public will continue to participate electronically and can watch the meeting streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. I'm asking everyone for their patience with any delays and technical issues today. The city clerk has connected all registered speakers to the meeting by audio. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the General Government Licensing Committee's page at toronto.ca/council, clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you about the important health and safety measures that we are all expected to follow today. All in-person participants have been seated 2 meters apart. Please stay in your designated seat. Do not change seats or sit in another seat. When entering or exiting or moving about the committee room, you must wear face covering. Sanitization kits have also been provided on the desktops. Attendance in the committee room is limited to only those persons who are required for the meeting. A number of clerks, audiovisual, and IT staff are present in the committee room. Members of the committee, this is a paperless meeting. The city clerk has provided all agendas materials via the clerk's meeting portal. Clerk's IT staff will be available to both in-person and remote participants to help with your devices. I would like to remind staff to keep their mics muted and their videos turned off unless they need to answer any questions or speak to the committee. This will make it easier for me as the chair and for those watching on YouTube to observe the members as they participate in the debate and vote on items. Members of the committee, also please keep your mics muted. I need more coffee this morning. Please keep your mic muted unless you wish to question staff or speak to an item, and ensure that your video is turned on. As part of the agenda item, I will ask members to raise their hand or unmute their mic if they wish to question staff or speak. I will then create a speakers list and will call on members when it's their turn to speak. When voting on an item or a motion, I ask that members ensure they turn on their video and raise their hand to indicate their vote. Members, I also want to remind you that whether you're participating in today's meeting in person or remotely, you still must submit and approve your motions by email. The city clerk staff will not be printing motions for your review. If you need to confer with city clerk staff in the room, you must stay 2 meters apart at all times. Staff are also available by email at gglc@toronto.ca to help with motions. If there's any visiting members of council attending the meeting today, I encourage you to turn on your video so that I know you're present, and can also give you the opportunity to ask questions of staff or speak. This will also assist the clerk staff to record attendance for the meeting. Thank you. And I would also like to say that although we're in different locations and meeting remotely today, the committee would like to acknowledge the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty Number 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. At this point, I'm going to ask if there's any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. If you do have an interest, please raise your hand and unmute your mic. Seeing none, I need a motion to confirm the minutes from our last meeting on September 14th, 2020.
So moved.
Councillor Holiday is moving the motion to confirm the minutes of the last meeting. All in favor? Carried. Sorry, I'm getting my head is all right. Members, we have 14 items on today's agenda. Item number 14, GL 14, is election of the vice chair. I would like to propose that we move that to the beginning of the agenda so we can deal with it, because that position is currently vacant. Before we can have the election, we do have one deputant on this item, Mr. Miroslav Glavic. If he is for 5-minute presentation of the committee. Mr. Glavic, are you online?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
5 minutes whenever you're ready.
I believe Councilor Holiday is still in the committee, and you guys jumped around. If I had to pick one, if I had to pick one member, that would be Councilor Holiday. He's track with his constituents in the committee, and for me, shows proof he's the one. We can't just clone Councilor Ainsley to be also the vice chair. So that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Glavich. Does anybody have any questions of the deputy? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Glavich. I appreciate your time this morning. So we are going to proceed with the election of the vice chair. Members, are there any nominations for vice chair?
Councillor Nunziata?
Councillor Nunziata?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Councillor Holiday.
Okay. Are there any further nominations for vice chair? Are there any further nominations for vice chair? And I have to call a third and final time. Are there any further nominations for vice chair? Seeing no further nominations, I declare the nominations are now closed. Councillor Holiday, do you accept the nomination as vice chair of the General Government Licensing Committee?
I do, Mr. Chair, and thank you, colleagues, and thank you to Mr. Glavich for those kind words.
All right. Congratulations. So I declare that Councillor Holiday, Deputy Mayor Holiday, has been elected as Vice Chair of the General Government and Licensing Committee. All right. I will now go to the agenda. Sorry, just a moment. All right, our first item is the administrative payment penalty system, the 2019 activities. Does anybody wish to hold this item? If not, could I have somebody move the recommendations?
So moved.
Councillor Holiday is moving the recommendations in number 1. All in favor? Carried. Item number 2 is the annual report on the 2019 parking enforcement unit parking ticket. Would anybody like to hold this item? It's recommended that we receive this item for information. Can I have a motion to receive this item?
Councillor Nunziata moves.
Okay, Councillor Nunziata is moving the item for receipt. All in favor? Carried. Oops, sorry. I just lost my agenda. Hold on here a moment. Sorry, just a moment. All right, back in business. Item number 3 is the 2000. Oh, I lost it again. Sorry, just a moment, everyone. Number 3 is the 2019 consulting services expenditures for city divisions and agencies and corporations. Would anybody like to hold this item?
Hold, Councillor Filion.
Councillor Filion is holding number 3. Item number 4, authority to enter into a non-competitive contract with Ernst & Young to support category management and strategic sourcing.
Hold, Councillor Filion.
Okay. I was going to move a motion to defer this item to next month. I know that members have had a lot of questions, but Councillor Filion will hold it in your name.
Yes, I'm fine with the deferral, but I do have a motion and probably some questions.
Okay. All right. So I will hold number 4 in your name. Number 5 is renewal of proprietary technology maintenance contracts supporting city services from 2021 to 2025.
Hold, Councillor Filion.
Councillor Filion is holding number 5. Number 6, co-location of housing and service integration at 2950 and 2970 Lakeshore Boulevard West. I'm going to hold that one for speakers. Number 7 is community space tenancy lease agreement and municipal capital facility designation for the Mittenja Community Services at 1652 Keel Street in Ward number 5.
Yes, I'll move the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Nunziata. Councillor Nunziata is moving the recommendations in number 7. All in favor? Carried. Number 8, proposed land lease for part of the city-owned property at 311 Staines Road for the Tamil Community Center. I'm going to hold that. I do have a technical amendment that staff asked me to move. Actually, can I do that now, Matthew?
Yeah, we can display your motion. Just give us 1 second.
Sure.
Okay, the motion is
All right,
being
the motion's
shared.
on the screen. It's a bit of a long technical motion. I'll give everyone a moment to read it. This is from facilities and corporate real estate staff, and mainly ensuring that the city's financial interests are protected and maintained. Does anybody have any questions on the motion? All in favor? The amendment carries. Item is amended. All in favor? Carried. Our next item. Our next item is number 9, lease amendments at 419 to 425 Coxwell Avenue in Ward number 19. Would someone like to move the if there's no holds, can somebody move the recommendations, please? All right,
So
I will
moved.
move the recommendations. All in favor? Carried. Number 10 is Toronto Island Marina. It's the lease extension in Ward 10. Somebody like to, if there's no holds, would somebody like to move the recommendations?
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Nunziata is moving the recommendations in number 10. All in favor? Carried. Number 11 is City Hall lease for media offices. I'm going to hold that for speaker. Number 12 is amendments to the non-competitive bridge contracts for summer and winter ground maintenance. Somebody like to move the recommendations?
Happy to move.
Councillor Holiday is moving the recommendations in number 12. All in favor? Carried. Number 13 is the Bridletown Community Hub update. There's one recommendation before us from corporate real estate. This is in Ward 22. Somebody like to hold it? Seeing none, would somebody like to move the recommendations?
I'll move it.
All right. Thank you. Councillor Nunziata is moving the recommendation number 13. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Okay, at this point, we're going to go back to number 6. We have a speakers list. Number 6 is the co-location of housing and service integration at 2950 and 2970 Lakeshore Boulevard West. For those people that are online and making a deputation, I'd just like to remind you that you have up to 5 minutes to speak to the members of the committee. Any member of the committee can ask you questions individually for up to 5 minutes. Once all of the deputations are done, we take it back into committee, where each member of the standing committee can ask questions of staff on this item for up to 5 minutes. Then each member is entitled to speak on this item for up to 5 minutes. And then after that, we will vote on any motions or the recommendation in the report before us today, which is to receive this item for information. And at this point, our first speaker was gone.
By who? Oh, okay. So they're on 6 then. Okay, we'll come back.
Yep. So our first speaker is Bree Gardner. Is Bree Gardner on the line?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Bree. You have 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Great, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. My name is Bree. I'm a lifelong resident of the Lakeshore. It's a community that is really the only place I think of as home. And I am really in support of the proposed shelter at this location. Lakeshore is a community that's for a very long time has been changing, in some places very rapidly. And unfortunately, part of that change has seen record numbers of evictions. This includes individuals, families, seniors, you name it. The truth is, it's a difficult time to be a renter in this city. And for a community where historically there have been a lot of renters, that's had its repercussions. I'm a little bit taken aback by the narrative that's been pushed around this shelter that New Toronto doesn't really have any poverty or homelessness, and this would bring in kind of a new element. That's not true. We have visible poverty on the Lakeshore. There are people on the streets sleeping directly outside where this proposed shelter would be. This wouldn't bring a new type of person to the community. We have everybody in our community, quite literally. I also do work with a group called the Lakeshore Affordable Housing Advocacy and Action Group. It was founded about 2 years ago to address the impacts the housing crisis has had on the community. And through many outreach activities, community events, workshops, and various initiatives, we've heard time and time again that there is a need for shelter space and affordable housing in the Lakeshore, both. We have had community members explicitly state that there is a need for shelter beds in Etobicoke Lakeshore. This makes sense when you consider that we already have some existing social supports in South Etobicoke. If your medical supports, your employment supports, and your social services, and also your neighbors and your community are all in one place, which is about an hour and a half out of the downtown core by transit, it just makes sense to have your housing and shelter supports in the vicinity. And regardless, I know there is some pushback to this shelter, but I don't believe that anyone has a right to say that an entire group of people they've never even met should not get to live in their community, no matter how much money or how big of a platform that person has. I really look forward to the new shelter in our community, and I know a number of my neighbors do as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gardner. I appreciate your presentation this morning. Is there anybody that has questions of the deputant? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Gardner. I really appreciate your input this morning. The next person on the list is Vashti King from the New Toronto Ratepayers Association.
Hi. Can you hear me okay? Hi.
I can.
Great.
You have 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Great. Thank you for allowing me to speak. So I represent New Toronto Ratepayers Association, and we oppose the use of those locations as a shelter. We support the use of those locations as permanent housing. People need permanent housing. So we do not dispute the need for shelters in Ward 3 or anywhere else in the city. By the time these buildings will be built, we're hoping that they will be permanent housing for people. So it's the emergency shelter component that we're opposing. The location that we're looking at, we've had over 2,000 residents and business owners in the community have signed the petition that you should have attached opposing that location as a shelter. We think it should be permanent housing and commercial space. So first of all, it's a misuse of taxpayer dollars. The property itself was purchased for $4 million and has a combined 2020 assessed value of 5.3, and the city is proposing to purchase it for 13.8, and then to put on top of that, pay more cost for temporary shelter rather than the cheaper alternative, permanent, affordable housing. The owner a year ago had proposed to tear down these derelict buildings and construct 2 floors of commercial space and 95 much-needed rental apartments. As the last person said, we need rental apartments. This would have been a win-win for the city. It would not have cost the city a dime. It would have provided many affordable rental apartments, and that was rejected by the city. Building of shelters is an outdated strategy. On September 30th, City Council adopted the Planning and Housing Committee's motion to shift future capital and operating funding from shelters to creating permanent supportive housing. Give people permanent housing, not these temporary shelters they get kicked out of every day. So we're urging you that this money is redirected, and this location is redirected 100% towards affordable housing, and ideally with commercial space on the ground floor to maintain the integrity of the small commercial area in New Toronto, so that people do have a place to go to work in the neighborhood and don't have to take an hour and a half transit to go downtown to work. They can work in the neighborhood. They can shop in the neighborhood. So this is... We're imploring you to maintain the ground floor's commercial space. In addition, there is a women's habitat location within 140 meters of this proposed location, and these are women who are escaping violence and abuse. So putting a male shelter within 140 meters of that location doesn't make sense, and putting a women's only shelter on a main commercial intersection doesn't make sense. The only thing that makes sense is to make this permanent housing. The City of Toronto shelter plan calls for smaller shelters integrated into the community, and a 100-bed shelter on a main commercial intersection is not small and not integrated. We already have 4 existing shelters, and adding and the services that support them, this will be adding burden to those services. So we're saying affordable housing is a better transition. It'll help people in those existing shelters transition into permanent affordable housing in the community, which will free up the existing shelter beds that are needed for new clients. So we support a plan to use the commercial use and affordable housing only. We support redirecting the money towards permanent housing, which will align with the forward-looking strategy presented by the Housing and Planning Committee and approved. It would contribute to the long-term solution to end homelessness, and it would help improve the New Toronto neighborhood so that people are in permanent housing and not in temporary shelters and not sleeping on the streets. So the residents and business owners of New Toronto are strongly opposed to the purchase of this and locating a shelter at that main commercial intersection. And we really urge you to reject the proposal to make it a shelter and to redirect that money for supporting the creation of permanent affordable housing at that site. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. King. Does anybody have any questions of the deputant? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. King. We appreciate your deputation this morning. Next I have on the list is Ms. Karen Ridley. Is Karen Ridley on the line?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good morning, Karen. You have 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak. I have always lived by the adage, there but for the grace of God go I. I have never been homeless, felt hunger, or had to worry about supporting myself financially. But I know that others in my community have not had the blessings I have. As a retired elementary school principal, I have always been an active volunteer in my community, giving back whenever and wherever I can. For many years, I have supported and worked at the Out of the Cold program that ran out of St. Margaret's Church on 6th Street. There I got to know many people who were dependent on the food, shelter, and friendship that were offered there every Monday night during the winter. As part of the breakfast team, we made sure our guests were provided a warm breakfast and a bag lunch before they headed out to their home for Tuesday night. Due to COVID-19, this program was forced to shut down. With winter fast approaching, I worry about the people I got to know over the years and wonder what their winter will be like. Will they be able to find a warm, safe place to sleep at night? Will they find food to help them stay healthy enough to survive what illnesses are spreading around our community? Will there be supports available to help them with their struggles, whether it be mental health, addiction, or loneliness? The Laker community has the opportunity to provide help to our neighbors who need us now more than ever, and that is why I support the proposal for a shelter at 2950 and 2970 Lakeshore Boulevard West. This will provide much needed help to people, not just on Monday nights, but every night, all year long. Through this project, people can get the help they need and hopefully take control of their lives again. I know some people in our community are speaking out against this project. They are using the same old excuses. Our property values will go down, crime will go up, this project will bring in homeless people from outside our community. Statistics show that none of this happens when a shelter housing project is put in a community. I urge this committee to approve this project as quickly as possible so that we have a safe, warm place for the most vulnerable members of our community. I, for one, will be there to welcome them and provide the support I have been doing for many years. Our community will be a better, safer, and kinder place to live with this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ridley. Are there any questions of the deputy from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much, Ms. Ridley, for your presentation this morning. The next person I have is Ms. Kara Wiggle.
Yes, my name is Carol Weigel, and thank you very much.
Sorry, my apologies.
That's okay.
Ms. Carol Weigel. Ms. Weigel, you have 5 minutes.
Yeah, for this
Sorry about that.
I've been the coordinator at St. Margaret's Lakeshore Out of the Cold for the past 14 years. And at this time, I'd like to share my thoughts based on what I've learned from this shelter that has already been in the Lakeshore at St. Margaret's Anglican Church on 6th Street every Monday from November to April since 2001. And why, as a community, we need to welcome this opportunity to be agents of change for those who are homeless in our neighborhood and beyond. Lakeshore Out of the Cold has provided overnight accommodation and services for people experiencing homelessness, as well as community meals for these past 20 years with very little negative impact. It's with great reluctance that the Out of the Cold programs had to close due to the impact of COVID-19 virus. And in March, the Out of the Cold organizations around the city communicated our deep concern that more regular shelter arrangements would need to be made for our guests. This was taken on by the city, specifically Dixon Hall, to provide a consistent place for them to stay. Emergency shelters were established, and with guests no longer at different sites each day, advocates for housing have actually managed to connect daily with these individuals and have been able to permanently house some of them even in this unprecedented times. The Out of the Cold guests are just a small part of people experiencing homelessness in our city, as seen by the various encampments throughout the city. We hope that the Lakeshore Shelter proposal, one that includes potential permanent housing, would make this a smooth and logical transition from streets to homes and a solution for some of our population experiencing homelessness. Wonderful buildings which offer accommodation in invisible spaces for people of little or no means aren't possible. And even if they were, this couldn't just happen overnight. It takes years. For many years, in conversations with the Out of the Cold guests, we are all at a risk of experiencing homelessness. These are people who have just come upon hard times. People with medical or physical challenges, victims of abuse, international students, and refugees, just to name a few of their life challenges. Their needs are varied. Some just need a temporary helping hand, others need a very supportive helping hand. There is one thing most of them have in common: to have somewhere to go that is theirs. For over 30 years, the Out of the Cold organization has been petitioning for our homeless population, waiting to hear that the homeless problem in our city is being addressed. It's so wonderful to hear our city leaders are actively looking for places that we can use for shelters and housing within already available places. I think we're so fortunate we have 2 buildings in our community which could serve this purpose so well. Now it's not the time to put roadblocks into the first serious steps to address shelter and housing for those of us who are homeless in our community, the West End of Toronto, which doesn't have much needed shelters currently. Our Lakeshore community is blessed with many active service organizations: LAMP, Storefront Humber, Daily Bread Food Bank, Salvation Army, St. Margaret's, Wesley United. This is a perfect situation to have a shelter housing project where supports are close by. Lakeshore Out of the Cold program has been supported by so many, perhaps 300 diverse volunteers, retired people, business people, students, businesses, churches, families, as well as people with experiences of every kind. These groups of volunteers are still here to support the work of the city through these shelters in any way they can. The other cold organizations at St. Matthew's and All Saints have already expressed their support for anything their volunteers can do for this endeavor in our Lakeshore community. We are faced with a chance to help our fellow Torontonians by being an example of a community that cares. We need to set aside our imagined concerns about what this proposal may bring lower house prices, raising crime levels, and too much of a certain kind of housing. We are the Lakeshore. We will meet the challenges. We are great no matter what. We need to take on this challenge together. This should be a community effort to make this a success for others to see. Let's embrace it. Welcome new people into our community who will be our neighbors, our customers, our worshipers, our workers, our classmates, and our friends. Just because people are experiencing homelessness right now doesn't mean they will be homeless forever if we all do our part. Let's support this proposal as we try to end homelessness and be an example of how to do this right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Widgell. Does anybody have any questions of the deputant? Seeing none, that was the last deputant on the list. I'd like to thank all the deputants for bringing forward their concerns and opinions this morning. It's very much appreciated by the members of the committee. At this point, I'm going to ask if there's any questions of staff on this item.
Yes, I have questions.
Councillor Nunziata, go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Okay, if I can ask staff, so the recommendation we have before us is to move receipt. So can you tell me what the status is? So is this site going to be a shelter or affordable housing?
Through the chair, so we are in the due diligence process, waiting to finalize on the purchase. At the moment, the money that SSHA has available to us can only be used for emergency shelter use, which is why currently this proposed as a shelter. But we are bringing forward a report this month to economic development, asking for permission to be able to pivot and use that money towards affordable housing. If we're able to do that, then we will certainly be looking at the ability to either combine shelter and housing or just have housing on this site. To be ready to make that decision quickly, we already have an architectural firm taking a look at the building and making a proposal for what that might be.
So in the report, you're going to have a community engagement process and work with local councillors. So that's the process that you follow for all shelters, correct?
That is correct.
And so the local councillor has an opportunity to have a community meeting prior or once you locate the site?
We have a community meeting set up for later this month. There'll be a flyer distributed out to the community this week, and then we will move forward with the project. We typically do the bulk of engagement closer to when the shelter is opening, so we did make a commitment to begin the early engagement with this.
So what happened with the site in Councillor Peruzza's ward where he was just notified by an email and didn't get the chance for a community meeting?
That was one of our temporary COVID hotel programs, Councillor. All councillors were notified if we were opening the program. Unfortunately, due to the rapid nature of having to open programs, the engagement with communities sometimes happened after the program was already opened, although we did notify Councillor Peruzza's office before the program opened.
Okay, so this report is just to move receipt and it will go to council, or did you say it goes to economic development? Is that what you said?
This report just goes to this committee as it's for information, but we will be bringing forward a report to economic development this month that will go to council, recommending that we broaden the way the staff use the money that was allocated for 40,000 beds to also include opportunities to create housing.
So this site is definitely a shelter.
Right now, we're only able to use the money for shelter if we get approval from the council in October to be able to expand the use of that money, then there is an opportunity to look at this site for potential housing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nunziata. Other questions of staff on this item?
Questions of staff?
Councillor Holyday?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask questions of, I think, the clerks on the sequence. So the recommendation before us is to receive the report. To recommend that council receive the report. So essentially, this committee can choose to recommend it go over to council. Ms. Bedard talked about another report that's going to council if it passes committee in October, and I just wondered if we could understand the timing, because it would seem to me that it would be wise of this committee to make sure that the option that was discussed in the answers to the questions was an available option, or that there was some certainty that that report was passed. And I wonder if the clerk could offer some advice on the timing of these two reports.
Mr. Chair, if this item gets submitted to City Council, it will go to the council meeting at the end of October. I'm not familiar with the item that staff referred to that's coming up through a different committee, but of course, if that item also gets reported to the same meeting, they would be on the agenda and could potentially be considered together if they are related.
Just to follow up, it said October 14th in the report of the, if an item is considered at the October 14th meeting of the Economic and Community Development Committee, would that be enough time to make it through the next council cycle? Because I know there's some very strict cutoff dates.
Yes, I believe so, because the council meeting, I believe, is the 27th of October, so that is well in time for the closing.
Okay, so the last piece would be potentially council could, I think you said, consider them together, because we would want to make sure that we understand both of them in order to make the right decisions.
Certainly, that's always an option for council.
Okay, thank you. And if I may just follow up, just one question to Ms. Bedard. I want to paraphrase the answer to make sure I understood it well. That at this point, the approval so far has been council approval to acquire the property, that the due diligence isn't completed on that, and that the exact services that are going to go on that location have not been finalized. If that's my correct read of one of the last paragraphs, I think you call it the mix of services. Do I have that right?
You do, yes.
So it could be a shelter, it could be a shelter and housing, it could be substantially housing. You haven't figured out that mix yet, and that report to council is very important because that will inform your options. Do I have that correct?
You have that correct, Councillor.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Holyday. Are there any other questions from the committee members of staff on this item? Seeing none, are there any speakers on this item? Would somebody like to move the recommendations of receipt? All right, I'm going to move receipt of this item for information. All in favor? And that carries. Okay, our next item is number 11, which is the City Hall leases for media offices, and I have one deputation, Mr. Miroslav Glavich. Glavich still on the line?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Go ahead, Mr. Glavich. You have 5 minutes.
This is the media office, right? 11?
Yes, sir. Number 11.
Okay, thank you. For the sake of disclosure, I work for 2 out of whatever amount of 2 media delivering the newspapers a long time ago in my teenage years. I work for both mainstream media and non-mainstream media. A lot of media companies out there are having issue with they're going to go broke and bankrupt. Yes, I know that the city of Toronto has to charge them some rent, but please be careful, because a lot of the smaller medias can't afford the hugely the high prices of renting at City Hall, at Queen's Park, at whatever the Parliament Hill, it can be too expensive, and when you don't, if some other outlets are not able, democracy fails when different voices are not heard. And that's all. Please don't overprice them. Thank you. I finished.
Thank you, Mr. Glavich. Are there any questions for the deputant? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Glavich. I appreciate your input this morning. Are there any questions of staff on this item? Seeing none, we have the recommendations before us on this item. Would somebody like to move the recommendations, please?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Holidays, moving the recommendations on number 11. All in favor? And that item carries. Thank you very much. Number 14 we dealt with. We are going to go back to item number 3, which was held by Councillor Filion. Councillor Filion on item number 3, the 2019 consulting services expenditures for city divisions, agencies, and corporations. Do you have questions of staff?
Yes, is the city manager with us?
He is not with us, Councillor Filion.
Okay, then I guess question of Josie.
We also have our CFO and our Chief Procurement Officer with us on the line too.
Okay, so whoever wishes to answer, the amount we pay on for consultants as a city seems to fluctuate wildly year to year, to the point where it's kind of difficult to even establish a trend. Who has an overall handle on this? I know various departments, deal with their requests and needs on a yearly basis, but who is monitoring? Is the city overspending on consultants? Are we getting good value for that money? Who looks at that on a larger level?
Through the chair, Councillor, it's Andrew Flynn, the controller. I'll start the conversation, and then certainly the chief purchasing officer can also talk about that. Consulting expenses are required to be reported as part of the quarterly operating budget variances. So there is ongoing review of the amount being spent on the operating budget, and then of course this report comes back to committee and council on an annual basis. All of our consulting contracts have to follow a strict approach with respect to demonstrating the need for critical skill sets. There have to be business cases that support that, often with a return on investment that's required. And I'd ask the Chief Purchasing Officer to perhaps talk about the procurement approaches.
Through the chair, for each consultant, they'll either go through a competitive process or they'll leverage a roster that is available, or in some cases, depending on the nature of the consulting work that's required, may require non-competitive, and that'll all depend on the particular circumstances. And in each situation, the size and scope of the consulting will vary by project. So one of the reasons why, to your point, it might be hard to see a trend is depending on what happens in each program area and what services they might require, depending on how their program changes year over year.
So what I'm having trouble understanding is how our need for critical skill sets, to use that term, could change so drastically year to year. you would think that would be somewhat predictable.
Through the chair, that I guess in certain circumstances that might be true, but consulting services have a lot of variety. So, for example, there are legal services being reported in here. There's information technology. So it's not. I don't know if it's as easy to suggest that we would have all the skills in-house or be able to bring all the skills in-house depending on the nature of the work. And each division head is responsible for determining the appropriate use of consultants when they require it or not. So they're always taking a look at their own operations to see what the capacity is for their work to be done in-house, or whether they need additional support to get that project or get that advice completed.
No, I understand the process, and I'm not sure that any of you have an answer, which I guess concerns me. So to take, just because you mentioned the legal department, you would think that they would have a somewhat predictable need for consultants. And I haven't looked at theirs in detail to see if they, year over year, they do or not. But, you know, you're going to have a certain number of problematic files that come up that, you know, that would, you know, you could have a jump 1 year or a drop 1 year, but these things tend to happen in predictable patterns that, okay, we're going to need to engage outside consultants for X, Y, and Z. And I can see how any individual department might fluctuate a bit, but I haven't heard any explanation for why numbers would, you know, jump up dramatically 1 year, then fall down the next year, then jump up again the next year, which is what you see when you look at the chart that shows the annual expenditures.
Through the 5 minutes, Councillor.
Through the chair, just to respond to Councillor, modernization and changes in demands tend to drive the different types of consulting that happen. As Mike explained, for example, if we have a particular, as we do coming up, an IT particular project ongoing, we'll need an IT legal support in that context. Our legal department does not have a large group of folks who have IT expertise, and will draw upon consultant lawyers, external law firms who specialize in that particular area. So quite often it's about a very specific type of expertise that is required that does not exist among city staff from that perspective.
Thank you very much. Are there other committee members that have questions on this item?
I have one, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, it's Councillor Fletcher. I do have one, if you can pop me in there somewhere. Thank you so much.
Good morning, Councillor Fletcher.
Good morning. Whenever the members finished, if you could find a spot for me somewhere, that'd be great.
I will do
Thank
that,
you.
Councillor Fletcher. Sorry, I didn't see you on the screen.
No, I'm sorry. Thank you. Bye.
Okay. All right. Councillor Holiday.
I had one question. So at council, we often vote through items where we ask outside consultants to support lawyers at different tribunals and various forums. I wonder if I can get that number out of this report, or if it's buried much deeper.
Through the chair, Councillor, we'll have to get you that number for that specific level.
Okay, I don't need a motion or anything. If somebody could find that, and if they can tell me how many cases they won, that would be great. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor.
I have
Councillor Holiday. Okay, sorry, Councillor Holiday, did you want that for City Council, in time for Council? Or?
Certainly not. That's something that I can talk to the staff about that I'm assuming there's a information gathering process, so it's probably just buried lower in the summary.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Councillor Holiday. Councillor Nunziata, questions of staff on this item?
Yeah, just a question. So the increases in the consulting fee, so is it all within the, when we approve the budget?
Through the chair, Councillor, absolutely.
Oh, okay, so you budgeted during the 2019 budget, so it's not that you're increasing your budget, you have it within your budget?
Yes, Councillor.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nunziata. Councillor Fletcher, questions of staff?
Yes, hi. Good morning, everybody. I had just a question on some of the consulting itself. And I noticed there was, if you could just confirm, please, the $250,000 for consultation on Quayside. Was that city assumed, or is that Waterfront Toronto? It shows Toronto Waterfront Revitalization Corporation.
Councillor, I'm told that was Waterfront Secretariat.
Waterfront Secretariat. And can I be clear, is that money that was spent?
Yes.
Or proposed? It was spent.
It was spent.
And that was, I'm very interested in, so that was the city's cost to review a project from Waterfront Toronto for which Waterfront Toronto had $50 million and the city spent $250,000 on consultants. Do we have a list of those consultants that you can provide, please?
Certainly, through the chair, certainly, Councillor, we can provide that.
And I think I'm also interested, this sounds crazy, but that doesn't include staff time, does it?
No, Councillor, this report would be just external consultants reporting.
So if we were to look at the, compute the staff time, that might be a fair chunk of change as well.
I can presume so, Councillor, but we can certainly work back with you in your office to get a more complete picture of that review.
And is this typical, let's say if TCHC, which is a corporation, or Hydro, has a project that somehow the city would have to spend $250,000 on consultants to review a project that hadn't yet been approved?
The chair, Councillor, I think that would be, I guess that would depend upon the type of project that is being looked at. If the city was going to be part of funding that particular project, we would certainly need to review all of the implications to understand.
Was the city funding Quayside? No?
No, just from a point of view of the overall project.
Could you tell me if the city spends consultant fees on Regent Park, on Lawrence Heights, on Alexander Park? Are there fees that the city has hired consultants, associated with consultants the city has hired to review those?
Through the chair, Councillor, we would have to go back through those particular areas to ascertain the answer to that question.
I think that would be very, very helpful to understand. And when a developer comes in, a part of the developer fees are to cover the city's review. Is that not correct?
Certainly development charges would relate to that particular review. Again, it would depend on the very specific circumstances of the project.
So I think it's helpful to understand what how that works, particularly in a case like the Quayside site. We may, if we're foregoing the development charges on Regent Park, then the city would be assuming that cost, staff cost. Is that right?
Certainly, if we were to forego development charges, then the city would have to incur its own.
Then our staff costs would come out of that. But
Yes.
I'm not sure that we were going to do that with the development charges for Quayside. So I'm just interested in how we racked up that actual spending and on consultants, and perhaps Waterfront Toronto actually owes that back to the city. So if you can confirm that with me between now and council, that would be helpful. And if the development charges for large city-initiated projects, that if we assume the consultation charges, I would say, or the staff charges through absolving the development fee requirement, that would be helpful. Am I speaking to you, Andrew? Is it
Yes.
you? Okay,
Yes.
I just see your name pop up here, but I don't have my video on, so I can't see
Yes.
you. I'm sorry.
Yes, I can't see you either, Councillor,
Okay,
but,
all right.
yes, it is me, and we will endeavor to get that information.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. And Mr. Chair, while I'm at it, I was late getting on the call. I did have a question on item number 2. And I know you've already cleared that item, but if you would indulge me, I would be very happy.
Yep,
to
I'm fine
ask
with
the
that.
question. Thank you so
Yep.
much. Thanks. Bye-bye, everyone.
Sorry, Councillor Fletcher, we'll come back to after this item, and we'll let you ask your question on number 2. Is that okay?
That would be great. Thank you, Paul.
Okay. Sorry, Andrew, you'll take that as direction from Councillor Fletcher. We don't need to move a motion?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Councillor Fletcher, did you want to speak on this item?
I'm just interested, and I know Councillor Fillion's interested in what he says is the jaggedness of the consultation fees. And I noticed, anyway, I'm just interested in that amount.
Okay.
And what
All
we
right.
had to do, why we had to do that at the city side, and whether or not we should capture those dollars. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Fillion, you held this item. Did you wish to speak?
Yes, and I don't have a motion, but I guess I do feel I didn't get an answer to the question of why the amount fluctuates so much year to year. And I'm guessing that's because nobody has a handle on that, just the way we're structured. It just all kind of feeds up, and then whatever it is, it is. I don't pretend to have spotted anything wrong. I just think that kind of fluctuation is odd. And when something is odd, you kind of look for an answer for it, and I haven't got one. So perhaps you have a suggestion, Mr. Chair. I was going to move a motion for a report back explaining the fluctuation, but I'm not sure I would get anything different than what I've received verbally today.
I'm fine, Councillor, if you wanted to ask staff to report back further on this for next month's meeting.
Sure, I
provide
guess
a written
just
report. I don't think they would mind that.
okay. Sure.
I don't want you to walk away from the meeting not feeling that you got the answers that you deserved.
Sure. Well, I would, I guess, then ask staff to report back with a more fulsome explanation of the reason for the fluctuations in total consulting fees year to year.
Sorry, it's the clerk. Councillor Fillion,
Yep.
are you trying to defer this item?
No. I'm just asking for a further report.
Okay.
Unless, I'm open to suggestions. I guess it doesn't make any difference if we defer it for a month. It's a information report. So the only reason to defer it would be to have both on the same agenda, so that they're not potentially going to council at different meetings.
Yeah.
So I'm open to your suggestion, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. So why don't we defer this report, and Mr. Flynn or Ms. Cioli can do an additional report as an attachment. So we have two. Our next state meeting is November 2nd, and then we have one on the 30th. I'm just, I know the timelines are always tight in between meetings. Which one do you prefer, the 2nd or the 30th?
The chair, it would be better the 30th for staff, if I could recommend that. November 30th, later November. I just think it's too tight for staff to do that. Plus, I think that staff could also meet with Councillor Filion with more detail too at the same time.
Okay. Is that okay with you, Councillor Filion?
Sure, that's great.
Thank you.
So Matthew, Councillor Filion's moving a motion to defer this item to the November 30th meeting of our committee with a further report from staff clarification from staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is that okay,
we are
Councillor Filion?
just working on the text of that right now.
Yeah, clarification on the reasons for the fluctuations in total consulting fees year to year.
Okay, just 1 second. We are just preparing it and we'll display it shortly. Chair, the motion's on the screen.
Okay, thank you, Matthew.
Councillor
So there's motion on the screen from Councillor Filion that staff report back to the November 30th meeting of the General Government and Licensing Committee with a more fulsome explanation with the reason for the fluctuations in total consulting fees year to year. Is that good, Councillor Filion?
That is good.
Okay, all in favor of the amendment or the deferral? And that carries. Thank you very much. Our next item is GL 16.4, authority to enter into a non-competitive contract with Ernst & Young to support category management and strategic sourcing. That was held by Councillor Filion. Councillor Filion, do you have questions of staff?
Yeah, just for starters, I want to make sure I have my numbers correct. So the total amount of this contract, including the success fee, is $8,985,000. Do I have that number correct?
Through the chair, that is correct. Yep.
Thank you. In some supplementary materials that came out Friday, the number 228 hours was in there for time worked by Ernst & Young consultants, I believe. But I couldn't figure out for how many weeks. So is the 228 hours correct, and over what period for how many weeks would people be working 228 hours?
Through the chair, that is based on a 17-month engagement starting from November 1st to March 31st, 2022.
So 17 full months of various people working 228 hours a week.
Correct. As things go, that is really, averaging out over the time. It may not be that each individual is, because some of the individuals that EY will employ are for specific subject matter. So it may not be that they work that, their little portion of hours every week. It may be 1 week they're working more, 1 week they might not work any, depending on the particular subject matter. But there are certain staff in EY that would be on the file each and every week.
Okay. I'm trying to do some real quick calculations here at the same time I'm answering questions, and I'm having a bit of difficulty doing it. What I'm trying to figure out is, which I could do if I wasn't asking questions at the same time, is what that works out to per person per week. It's whatever, however many weeks you want to say is equal to 17 months into 8.985 million. If somebody can quickly do that.
I don't think anybody can quickly do that, John.
Okay, well, I can quickly do it if you can hold down my questions and I can come back to them.
Sure, I can do that. Is that unless somebody wants to number crunch quickly? All right. So we'll hold Councillor Philly on.
We're trying to number crunch in the background.
Can I ask a question then, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
On that?
Nunziata, questions?
No,
we'll come back to Councillor Philly.
It is Councillor Fletcher, even though.
A minute. Sorry, Councillor Nunziata.
No, it's not Nunziata, it's Fletcher.
I know we sound a lot alike. We're very cool.
Who should you be apologizing to? Neither one, I would suggest.
I'm going to apologize to both of them individually.
Why? We should be happy. We should be happy we sound alike. I'm happy to sound like Francis.
Councillor Fletcher, go ahead.
I just want to ask staff about how they would break down a large contract as far as what would be the, what I'm going to call the office expenses side and the human payment side, which are actually two different things. So I believe they are, and I don't know if you have a formula for that. Fact that using all of their materials, using all of their computers, using all of that, which is the hard costs, I guess we'll call them the hard costs, and then the soft costs.
Through the chair, Councillor, I'm trying to understand your question, and Mike can certainly break down the fees between what is a monthly fee, what is a deliverable cost, and what is the success fee. Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm looking for the ratio for, you're paying for staff at Ernst & Young, and you're paying, I believe in there'd be hard costs. So lights, computers, all those kinds of things. And is there an established ratio or not? You know, when we have a little contract for somebody going out with the shelters, they get a certain amount. That's to cover all of their expenses. But when you're in a big office building, I think there must be some hard costs associated with that. I just don't know what your ratio might be. Is it 90 to 10? Is it 50-50? I'm sure it's not 50-50, but I know you've thought about that before.
Sorry, Heather Taylor.
Pardon? Didn't hear you.
Sorry, go ahead, Andrew. I thought Heather was going to answer.
Through the chair, Councillor, the Ernst & Young would apply a flat rate for each particular employee, rather than kind of an HR cost plus an overhead cost.
So what would their ratio be?
I can't speak to that, Councillor.
A standard, what's the standard business cost ratio out there for consultants as far as it's a fixed rate, but there's a staff cost and there's a hard cost, and that way, when you get the number for Councillor Filion, the hourly rate, you're going to know how to break that out between people and things.
Through the chair, they, the overall weighted average fee for EY is $121 per hour, based on the way that they've structured this deal. How they break down their specific hard costs for their or their min fee is not is buried into that $121. So not every.
So you're telling me now you've done the numbers, Michael, and it's 121 an hour.
That's related to
the weighted average.
Yes.
I'll wait for the number then.
Well, through the chair, the contract is based on both a deliverable and a monthly fee, and they have different resources of different levels being applied throughout the contract. So the weighted average fee is $121. So there's employees that would be paid higher than that within their own structure, but that, from our perspective, that's how the weighted average is, and it's in relation to the fact that there are deliverables. Part of the contract is deliverable based, so it's they need to provide a quality deliverable and not be concerned with how long it takes them. And then there's a second component, which is around the strategic sourcing events, which is a monthly fee. So there's the hourly rate becomes more relevant there, and we want to ensure that we find the benefits that we've indicated in the report to actually get a return on investment here, which we've indicated we are trying to get $110 million in benefits to the city, both cost savings and cost avoidance.
For the total of $9 million.
Thank you. Sorry, that's the end of the 5 minutes for Councillor Fletcher. Sorry, are there other members of the committee that have questions on this item?
Mr. Chairman, it's Councillor Nunziata.
Yes.
It's my understanding are you not deferring this item?
Well, I am moving a motion to defer it because there was I heard from members of the committee that they had met with staff and needed more clarification on this item, so I was moving deferral for a month.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. Are there other questions from the committee members on this item? Other than Councillor Filion, we had to go back to Councillor Filion. Does anybody else have questions on this item before I go back to Councillor Filion? Hearing none. Councillor Filion?
So I did some quick math. Tell me if I've got this right or wrong. So 17 months equals 73.66 weeks. I then multiplied that times 228 and came up with 16,794.48 person hours. Does that sound right? Did someone come up with a different number per person hours?
I think Michael's looking at that right now.
Sorry about that. So the sorry, can you repeat your number again?
So I'm going with, so the 17 months equals 73.66 weeks, I believe. And then we were told that an average week consisted of 228 person hours. So I multiplied one number by the other, and I get a total of 16,794.48 person hours.
Through the speaker, we're not far off. Our understanding is the total number of hours for the agreement is 15,500. So let me just see.
Okay. So just to make things simple, I'll use your number. So I'll have to do another quick. So if I multiply 1,500 500 person hours times 121 an hour, I get 1,875,500. I believe that's correct. But the contract is 8,985,000. So how would you explain the discrepancy between those two numbers? If it's costing us 121 an hour, how does the total then come to almost 9 million rather than less than 2 million?
Through the speaker, the number of hours is in relation to the monthly fee, and the other component of this contract is there are deliverables, which is the 3.485 million is the other component of that amount, and then the success fee, if we are able to achieve benefits, is on top of that.
So the $121 an hour does not count the success fee?
No.
And why
or
would...
the deliverables.
Right. So if you take the, and I haven't done this, so bear with me, and probably Councillor Holliday, who's an accountant, and I barely made it through high school math, so I'm sure Councillor Holliday can figure this out better than I can. But if you take the 895 8,985,000 and divide that by 15,500, it comes out to a very large amount per hour that we are actually paying. So is there something wrong with my math, or are we paying actually, in effect, hundreds of dollars per hour for these consultants?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I think what we could do is break down the contract into the three components. And Andrew, if you want to quantify each of the components, it'll help you better understand how the calculation has been brought together, because there is an hourly component, there's a success component, and there's a deliverable component.
No, that's great, as long as you add them all up at the end, because that's the number I care about.
Right. So if you don't mind, we'll try and walk you through each of those components, and hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense.
Certainly we can, through the chair, certainly we can do that. Thank you, Heather. I guess, Councillor, one of the things to keep in mind is that the deliverable component that Mike has talked about is not hour dependent. It is a requirement of the contract that they have to comply and provide the deliverables. So if Ernst & Young spends hundreds of hours to deliver that deliverable, that's over and above the 15,000 hours that are part of the.
Sure. So just, again, to cut to the chase and provide as much detail as you want. I'm certainly not trying to stop you from providing the detail, but what I'm trying to get to is basically what it costs us to achieve our objective, what it costs us per Ernst & Young employee sort of converted to annual salary. And unless my math is wrong, and it could be, it comes out to more than $500,000 a year per person. And I think we could hire some awfully good people for less than $500,000 a year. I don't think there's anybody in the city who makes close to $500,000 a year. So that's what I'm trying to get to, however you want to deal with that.
Through the speaker, I think one of the things to note is that there's 2 points. One is the success fee is dependent on actually achieving the benefits. So they will not get the success fee if we do not actually achieve the benefits. And that is, hard to determine in advance the success of each particular sourcing event. But the other component with respect to hiring staff, the ability to move quickly and to work and achieve this $110 million, the team is already there. The city would require to spend a considerable amount of time going out, trying to build out the team in order to achieve this. We cannot do this starting November 1st. This would probably take us 8 to 10 months to hire an individual, and we believe that we would need at least another 9 staff of various levels to be able to do this. The overall intent for us, though, is to get EY to teach us as much as possible so that when we're done with EY at the end of March 2022, then we're fully capable of then sustaining it going forward, including having supplier relationship management playbooks and contract management playbooks so that we can help the divisions deal with audit issues that they have, and to be able to continue to find savings moving forward in other sourcing events.
Certainly through the chair, Councillor, I understand the motion is to defer until presumably November 30th, Mr. Chair. We can certainly work back with you to give a more fulsome to help you have a more fulsome understanding, Councillor, of not only what benefits that we've received over the last year and a half that this contract has been in place, but how we anticipate this happening in the future, so that you can understand how we're approaching this from a value perspective, which I think is your point, is that if we can't not obtain this in a way that creates better value for the city.
Okay, so maybe what I can do is just on behalf of the committee, so I would like to move a deferral motion to November 30th. If we could so defer this report, have a further clarification of, I think you've heard everybody's concerns, and I think if we could also have a presentation at the November 30th committee as well included.
Mr. Chair, I had a motion which I'm happy to incorporate into a deferral motion. I wrote it, the wording of it anticipates a deferral motion, but I wouldn't want to not be able to place it because you've placed a deferral motion.
Yep, not a problem at all. Sorry, can we just change the date on it to November 30th?
Yeah, I'd originally had it that it come to the same meeting, but that's fine.
Yeah. So Matthew, could we change the date to November 30th?
Just a small typo, the on is of the hiring of permanent staff.
Do any members of the committee have any questions of the mover on Councillor Fillion's motion? Seeing none, so we have a motion from Councillor Fillion. And that's in conjunction with my item motion that we're going to defer this item to November 30th. And I think staff have an understanding of we're looking for a further clarification report and also a presentation on this item at the November 30th meeting. Okay, so I think we can take these two motions together. All in favor? Item is amended. All in favor? Carried. Okay, thank you very much.
The item is deferred, yes.
The item is deferred. Where did my agenda go? Our next item is number 5, renewal of proprietary technology maintenance contract supporting city services from 2021 to 2025. Councillor, there's also supplementary materials added on November 30th and a revised report on September 30th as well. Councillor Fillion, you held this item. Questions for staff?
Thank you. So I did have a discussion with staff. They were good enough to brief me. So I'll kind of jump to the questions that arose of that. I just want to verify my understanding that the city is trying to move away from contracts. Let me move back one step. Would I be correct that the city has over the years gotten itself into contracts with technology providers that it becomes very difficult to get out of, as in go to a different supplier or provider because we get locked into a certain technology? Would that be a legitimate concern?
Through the chair, Councillor, in response, I would state that the wording is actually proprietary technology. So therefore, those contractors have built a proprietary technology and they own exclusive rights. That would be the terminology that would be used. So they build a specific software. They have the exclusive rights about the support and the maintenance.
And approximately how many contracts would we have that would be dealing with proprietary technology?
Through the chair, in this report, it specifies there's 187.
So all 187 of those are with proprietary technology?
Through the chair, that is correct. They have the exclusive rights of those technologies.
And so am I correct then that it becomes very difficult to go to a new provider because we have to basically dump everything we've got and start over? Is that generally correct?
Yes, through the chair, if you wanted to divest, to move away from, you would then be looking at a new contract or a new provider that would be providing a different technology that is not proprietary to those. Yes.
So assuming that that's not a good thing, if I'm wrong on that assumption, someone please correct me. How did we get into this situation and how do we get ourselves out of it?
Through the chair, maybe I'll just expand a little bit, Councillor. Within technology and within the industry, you're going to have technology providers that build a product to be able to satisfy the needs of a customer. That's not ununique. It's happened. In answer to your next point, I think it's a combination of looking at a broader approach within the city of how we centralize technology platforms to meet services in the city, so that we ensure that we start to look how we divest away from
individual contracts to a much more larger enterprise, which would allow us to have a much more unified approach. So I think how we move forward is just looking at that holistic view, and what this report tries to help us is at least to show is that here is the holistic number, and as we move through in each of the negotiations, we look how we create a much more enterprise viewpoint, which as a city, it's certainly an opportunity for us to achieve.
So of those 187 contracts with proprietary technologies, how many city departments have negotiated or entered into those?
Through the chair, I can actually break down in terms of each of the service groups. So within community and social services, there are 22% of those contracts, specifically 41 out of the 187. Through corporate services, there are 42 out of the 187, approximately 22.5%. Through finance and treasury services, there's 15 out of those 187. And through infrastructure and development, there's 72 out of the 187. And then there are other groups that fall under 17. So that would be other groups in terms of whether you're talking with the city clerk's office and various other groups that fall into that. That's how it's broken down. So it's spread across the whole city.
So how do we wrestle that under control, assuming that that's what we want to do, when it is spread over the entire city and the only person who oversees the whole city is the city manager? And I'm sure he can't look at 187 contract renewals.
No, through the chair, I think it falls under the Technology Services Division through a centralized approach. What we're trying to do is that as we walk through, and I've got an example, we're walking with some of the divisions on something called Enterprise Work Management System, which is our sort of asset management system. I think it's really within the Technology Services Division is working with those divisions to understand their needs and ensure that we are not procuring it based on just a divisional purpose, but really a corporate viewpoint where we can. There are some of these technologies that what we call operational technologies. They're important for those divisions to run their business, but I think it's really about the centralized view. And I think we started that process through the chair in responding to the councillor. We do have examples like our Salesforce platform for our customer service management, where we're trying to ensure that if you're going to procure case management, you're coming within an enterprise view. So I think it started. We do need time. This situation, has taken time to get to this place. And I feel confident that in working with each of my colleagues in the division and working with the senior leadership as we prioritize, we can actually find a way of divesting of some of this technologies that's more unique and come into a much more enterprise approach.
Oh, thank you. And my last question, just again, to be clear, so none of these, either none or very few of these, the people putting contracts forward would report to you. You're looking at it, but you have no authority over them. Would that be correct?
That would be correct. Through the chair, the division IT, as most people know, within Technology Services, we're the corporate function, but there are divisional IT and various groups that do not currently report into Technology Services. We are working with our colleagues in a much more centralized approach, but current today, those division IT do not report into the Technology Services or the Chief Technology Officer role.
So if I may, Councillor Filion, through the chair, it's Josie. I think the direction that we did receive from council last year was around the centralization with the audit report, and that's the work that Lawrence is talking about, that we are working with the divisions on the centralization where we can, and we are working, and we were actually doing a pretty good job right now in having the right discussions, and some of the work is already going under that oversight of Lawrence, as well as cybersecurity is the same discussion. Just wanted to give you that that feedback, considering the work we are doing since last year. Okay,
Right. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Those
Thank
are
you,
all my
Councillor.
questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Filion. Other questions from the committee on this item? Seeing none. So Lawrence, I just had a couple of due diligence questions. Can you explain a bit about, so we're moving this report forward. Can you explain a bit about, as a committee, we often get, they come back with an increase in contracts. Are you're not expecting that with this report moving forward?
No, through the chair, the actual increases are part of the consumer price index of inflation. So, and it goes into each budget. So every year it actually is part of the budget approval. These contracts are not increasing in terms of just an increase of contracts. It's really through inflationary pressures whereby the contracts are. But on each of the renegotiation, we are looking at ways of ensuring the city is getting the best value, and that's part of the process.
And that follows on my next question around technology or older technology, and I think Councillor Filion covered this pretty well about, can you just clarify how we're weeding out old technology and system programs? I think you pretty much covered it, but I'd like to hear it again. I think you're doing great work on the modernization, and I think it's very much needed as we talk around proprietary systems, but I think we also need to modernize the system, correct?
Yes, through the chair, that is accurate. What we're doing is that within technology, there are contracts where you would have end of support, so no more support is provided, or end of life. The technology that are end of life, what we're stating is that as the city is moving through its roadmap, and some of our environments, we are modernizing as quickly as we can. Through that process, we're ensuring that there's certain standards. And what I've communicated is that there are 4 S's, and maybe the committee probably hasn't heard that. Everything we do now, certainly we demonstrated that through COVID, has to ensure that any new technology provides stability. We are stable in terms of how we're running the business. That's the first S. The second S is that every new technology we're looking at and working with our city group has to ensure that we are able to scale. We can go in a bigger scale as we need it based on the size of the city. The third S is ensuring that the solutions are being built out of a whole enterprise. So that means is that they're integrated within all the other services, and we're not just having siloed-based technology. And then the final S is that we are sustainable. So that means we're making sure it's secure, it's sustainable. That methodology is what we have used through this pandemic that has successfully supported the city. So what that will do through the chair is to try to, as you said, wean out some of these old legacy pieces that are no longer part of the modernization as we're moving forward.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. It's much appreciated. Councillor Filion, you held this item. Did you wish to speak to it?
Yes, I have a motion that the clerks have, I believe. That the city manager report to the General Government and Licensing Committee by the second quarter of 2021 on progress to extricate ourselves from and avoid entering into contracts which provide few practical ongoing alternatives, but to continue with existing vendors. That's worded in very layman's terms, but I think we clearly are moving in the right direction. My kind of remaining concern is that Lawrence doesn't have the authority over these 187 contracts, and I think, and the city manager does, and I'm sure he's exercising that through the deputy city managers. I just think it would be, we're dealing with such large amounts of money here and a pretty major problem. I would just be comforted by a report that said everybody is cooperating and we are moving in the right direction as quickly as we can.
Okay. Are any questions of the mover? So, Councillor Fillion, I just wanted to clarify. So in the report we have before us today, we have the 4 appendices which outline all of the contracts that we're talking about. So you would, I guess, basically what Lawrence was verbalizing around modernization and consolidation, you would like a more expansive understanding in writing of his comments.
Yeah, well, mainly I'm looking for that there is a central guiding hand with some authority to make sure we are moving ahead. It looks, I think we clearly are moving ahead, but, Lawrence's ability to wrestle 187 contracts is limited, I think. So I just want to make sure the directive is coming from on high to do that.
Okay. And do you want options included in that report for that Lawrence could provide us for moving forward on that?
That would be welcome, sure. And I'm glad to alter the wording of the motion too, if you want to suggest better wording.
No, I'm okay with the wording. I just want to make sure that staff are clear on what you want provided.
Okay, thank you.
Lawrence and Josie, you're okay? Or Lawrence in particular, you're okay?
Through the chair, yes, I'm okay with it, and we'll come back on report and show a trend of how we're trying to divest off, which I think is the essence of where the council is.
I think the importance is progress, and I think that's where Councillor Fillion wants to see, and I think that that's fair, and we want that too, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Okay. Are there any further questions of Councillor Fillion? Seeing none, are there any other speakers on this item? Seeing none, so we have the amendment from Councillor Fillion before us. All in favor? And the item as amended, and I believe it's the recommendation are before us as well. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Is Councillor Fletcher still on the line?
I am.
Councillor Fletcher, we're gonna, you had questions, although it's already been dealt with on number 2, the annual report of the 2019 Parking Enforcement Unit parking ticket issuance. I don't know if staff are still available, but we'll give it a shot.
Yeah, I did, and I know you've opened it. Are you reopening that? Yes. Chair, or just giving me a courtesy question?
I was going to give you courtesy questions since we dealt with it already.
All right, so I just wondered if...
Sorry, Mr. Chair, we do need to reopen the item to ask questions.
Oh, okay. All right. So I will move a motion to reopen number 2. All in favor? Carried. Councillor Fletcher, go ahead. Questions, 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm wondering if, and I see this is coming from Toronto Police Services for their parking enforcement unit, but at what point are we going to see, when they say they have tickets for rush hour / bike lanes, where is that, where can we see the differentiation of that for the number of tickets that were given out for rush hour parking versus parking and bike lanes? Is that in a different report somewhere?
Councillor Fletcher, it's Josie. We're just trying, I think Toronto Police is on here, and so are so is the controller, but we're just trying to figure out who's going to answer this question. Hopefully they're on. I just can't see their face.
I guess it's, sorry. Hi.
Hi, it's Superintendent Baptist from Toronto Police Parking Enforcement. I am on the line. I'm just, if I'm looking through the report that we put through the Toronto Police Services Board, and I believe we do break it down in that. Has that report been provided to you on the committee for reference?
I saw that. I did see a report, but I saw that you have a category rush hour / bike lanes fines.
Yeah, if you look
Unless you've broken that down further. Is it broken down further?
We can break it down further. In the report that went through the Police Services Board, dated January 10th, 2020, We issued 71,932 rush hour offenses specifically for vehicles in rush hour routes, and it further specifies 6,734 offenses were issued for parking in bike lanes.
You know, sorry to interrupt you, but I just have to ask the clerk, I don't see that. I just see the GL 16.2. Is there something further? Because
Councillor Fletcher, I have the report if you want me to drop it off in your office.
No. I thank you very much. I know you're on the Police Services Board. I'm actually asking so all councillors would have that. So I'm just clarifying that level of detail that I was just given as far as rush hour parking and bike lane parking, that isn't attached to 16.2. I'm asking the clerk.
I believe it's part of 16.1, isn't it?
Is it? If it is, I'm apologizing. You're the chair, you would know. Okay. That's the administrative penalty system, which is clearing tickets, is it not?
Yep.
That's
it's
our new
Casey
system.
Brendan.
Yep. Go ahead, Casey.
Thank you very much. It's Casey Brendan, Councillor Fletcher, and Chair Ainsley. The report that is item 60.1 on today's agenda is the annual report on parking ticket issuance. We report annually on parking ticket issuance, and attachment 1 to the report gives a breakdown of parking offense types and the number of parking tickets issued in 2018 and 2019.
Is that attachment 1? Breakdown of PVN and PIN insurance by parking bylaw category, 18 and 19?
That's correct.
And when you say, I'll just ask you about this, thank you. When it says 6.5%, does that mean that's 6.5% of all the tickets issued, or 6.5%? I'm just looking at parking, 3-hour limit, park longer than 3 hours, penalty amount 15, number issued, and percent of the numbers issued, but it does not have the actual dollar value, does it?
It has the fine amount in the very first column.
Yes.
Is $15.
Correct.
And the number issued there is 144,000, which is 6.5% of all tickets issued.
Correct. But we don't have a category here that says, and here's the total amount of the revenue. No.
Revenue by type, no. But I mean.
And where is the parking in a bike lane on here, on this list? That I was just asking Officer Baptiste about.
Parking, I'm not sure that we have that broken out by a category. I'm not seeing it here. But if it is a significant number of tickets issued in that category, we would add it as a category for next year's report.
And where is the rush hour parking? Because I see that in item 2.
Yeah, rush hour parking would fall under a number of these categories. Really, the first one, park signed highway during prohibited times and days. That's really rush hour parking.
So it might be helpful to actually have the same language in both reports. If a police service is saying rush hour parking and bike lane parking, it would be helpful if we had the actual ticket name with a bracket that said that's what the descriptor. And then I'm looking for permit parking fines, not park without a permit or I'm looking for switchover fines.
No valid permit, that would be item number 3.
No, I'm asking for the switchover when the grace period, for the grace period.
But the ticket, in the case of a grace period on a switchover day, if you were parked on the wrong side of the street after the switchover, you would be issued a ticket and a no valid permit because you're now parking in a location on that street for which you do not have a permit to park.
But there's many people that park there, I see, but they do have a permit for that street. They're just at the wrong time. So I don't feel that we have enough. They have a permit.
Last question, Council.
Well, I'm just going to ask him, the officer, this question, and I'll be asking again at council, so everybody know. I'm going to do a lot of work on this one. But it is that number of years ago, City Council passed a motion, a bylaw that said the grace period for when parking switches from one side to the other should be extended to noon, and we requested Toronto Police Service to extend it. Let's say it's from 12 to 7 a.m. or 12 to 9 a.m. is the actual permit. Apparently, Toronto Police Service has a grace period that you have put in operations from 9 p.m. to midnight. So if you come home, you can start on the other side of the street. But operations at that time refused to acknowledge the grace period in your operational manual from whatever time the parking permit technically ends to the noon or the 3 hours. Have you revisited that in any way, or can you explain why it could be a grace period in the evening and refusal to put one in the morning in your operations manual? Or do you need to look into that and let me know? Which I'm happy
sorry,
to do.
Superintendent Baptist, is this question being directed to me?
Oh, yes, I said yes, it was for you, and you only.
My apologies, I guess I missed that. Yeah, we have a grace period from 9 p.m. the night before to 9 a.m. the morning of, and the city will further honor that until 12 noon of that day. They won't prosecute. So that has been the standard way of dealing with this. Those changes were implemented, if I remember correctly, about 2 years ago. And that's been in place for some period of time. And the reason being, if we're going to do anything further, then the bylaw would require a change.
Our bylaw was changed, but the operations manual was not changed, as I understand it. So perhaps we should take this offline and figure out what's really happening. Or do it at council. Would that work for you?
Call me anytime,
I think I'm going to ask you, Mr. Chair, that we get this sorted, because this will come up at council, so I'd like to understand clearly how that works. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Could I ask the, sorry, is it Superintendent?
Yes, Superintendent Scott Baptist. I'm the Unit Commander of Traffic Operations for Toronto Police.
Wasn't sure if you're still on the line.
I'll just move the recommendation. I'm just going to move the recommendation.
Yeah, no problem. We're almost done, Councillor Nunziata. Okay, so Councillor Nunziata is moving.
Thank you. I just want to know which staff person puts this together, so I'm not going to waste a lot of time at council, please. This actual chart.
Yeah, it would be the superintendent for the Toronto Parking Authority.
This chart?
Along with the staff.
No.
This actual, no, I don't think so. The administrative penalty system chart, attachment 1.
Kelly, is that you or Casey? I'm just asking the team for Councillor Fletcher. Sorry about that.
Well, maybe a deputy city manager, you could get back to my office with this and let me know fully everything, and I'll let you know more about it, and you can help me problem solve it. That's fantastic. Thank you so much, everybody.
No problem.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, Councillor Nunziata is moving receipt of this report. All in favor? Carried. And motion to adjourn the meeting. Councillor Matlow, all in favor? Carried. Thank you, everybody. Everybody stay safe and well. Thank you very much and have a great day.